In this video, we're going to be covering GraphQL Mutations Part 2, where we talk about updateMany, deleteMany, and updateMany with multiple conditions. So, for example, let's say you have a drag and drop feature where you would be able to drag and drop, a series of items, and they would update the order of all of those items automatically. You would need to be able to handle an update for all of those items. So that's kind of what we're going to cover today. And so what you'll want to do is grab the code, the existing code from the GitHub repository in the link in the description, and then switch to the start-update-deleteMany-vid branch, and that will be the starting point for this code. Go ahead and follow these directions here, and then you'll be set up and ready to go. This is one part of a complete GraphQL series where we build an entire production-ready application. Please subscribe to the channel and click the link in the description to get the latest tutorials and the rest of the series. Okay, so once you've followed the instructions and you're ready to go, we need to make sure that we have a couple of to-dos, because the first thing we're going to do is updateMany. I don't know what we're going to do first, but we want to make sure we have to-dos. So let's go ahead and do node src index to turn it on. And then in our localhost 4000, so I'm assuming that you're already familiar with most of this stuff because this is a little bit more advanced. So so go ahead and create to-dos. So I've got this one here. We can create a to-do. I'm going to name mine by toilet paper, and then go scuba diving. And by a mountain bike. Okay, cool. So now let's make sure we have our to-dos. And so if we do our query, again, you should already know how to do this from the previous tutorials. Query to-dos, ID name is completed. We're just querying for those. And so we've got our to-dos. So now we're ready to go ahead and run mutations on those. And so the first thing we'll want to do, if we're going to start with deleteMany. And so in order to do that, we need to figure out how Prisma has us deleting many objects. And so if we take a look at the CRUD documentation, there's a deleteMany section here that tells us how to do this. And they use kind of a different syntax, and syntax changes depending on what kind of implementation you're using. So there's a bunch of those. But it's all pretty much the same thing. It just looks a little different. So anyway, what we have here is we need to return a batch payload, which is essentially has just a count. So we need to create a new type. And so in our code, we can, in our schema.graphql, we'll want to create our delete to-dos. And so we can do that. And then we'll want to return a batch payload type. And then it'll have a count. So let's go ahead and do that. So we got delete to-dos, and then we need to make several to-do IDs. So we'll be taking in a list of IDs that we're going to be deleting. So to-do IDs, and again, it's going to be a list of IDs, and then returns the batch payload. What am I doing? Oops, no. Like that. Batch payload. And then we need to actually create the batch payload. So we can do that anywhere down here. We'll do it. Type batch payload. And then a count, which is the number of to-dos that Prisma has found and deleted. That's not right. Count. And then int. And save that. And the next step is to set up our resolver function for the delete to-dos. So we'll go ahead and go into our index.js file, and then we can set that up. So we can do delete to-dos, and then our arguments. And so when we get the to-do IDs args in our list, they come in as the wrong type. They come in as strings, so we need to convert them into integers. And I may be doing this not the best way, but that requires me to have to do this, but it's okay. So we just have to convert these into integers, and then from there we can pass them into our deleteMany. So we're going to go do return context.prisma.todo.deleteMany, and then we pass in our data. So we use the conditional, or the clause, I guess, the where clause, and we set it to where the ID, like we're checking to make sure the ID field is inside of this array or list that is passed in, and this list will be new IDs. So that should be good. Yeah, we're essentially just checking to see if the ID field is in the new IDs array. If it is, delete it. So we'll go ahead and save that. Okay, now we're ready to try it out in the playground. So let's go ahead and restart our server. And then head over to our playground. Oh, where'd it go? Local. Okay, so now we can do our mutation. So mutation, and we're going to be deleting to-dos, and we'll use our to-do IDs, and then we're going to have an array of to-dos that we're going to need to delete. So we'll need to look at the to-dos. So we've got ID 1, 2, and 3. So we can delete, however many we want. Let's delete 1 and 3. So delete to-dos, 1 and 3. And then we have to always return at least one subfield. So, and the only subfield we have actually in the batch payload, because it's returning a batch payload type, is count. So if we hit go, it will say it deleted 2, and then if we go check out our to-dos and we hit go, we can see that only one of our to-dos is left. So that's how we delete many. Okay, and the next step is to update many, and we're going to need to repopulate our to-dos. So let's go ahead and just add this by mountain bike again. Shoes. Okay, cool. So now we got a couple more to-dos that we can work with. So we want to update many now. And again, we're going to need to go into our schema.graphql file. So we go there, and again, it's a mutation, and we will go ahead and add a, so let's think about what we're gonna do. We can do so for to-dos, we can reset them, if you wanna maybe have like a daily to-do list or like a morning routine or something like that. You could reset your to-dos every day. So I'm lazy, so we're just gonna, because they come out by default as false, we'll reset them to become true. So let's go ahead and do that. So reset to-dos. And again, we're gonna be resetting multiple, so we'll need a list. So to-do IDs, and then a list of IDs. So ID. And again, we're also going to be returning a batch payload here as well. And so we already have the batch payload here, so it's time to go into our index.js after we save. And then we'll create our reset to-dos mutation. So reset to-dos, and our arguments, parent args context info. And so we could do something like, let me open a new thing. So we could do something like this, where is completed is false, set is completed to true, but that's not going to, you might not want to reset your entire database of to-dos. Notice how we're not using the arguments at all for the to-do IDs arguments. So we want to make sure that the condition is that the is completed is already false, and we want to only reset the IDs that are in the args array. So we need an and conditional. So we can do that. Let me delete this. Let's go ahead and get to the point where we're putting in our data. So return context.prisma.todo.updateMany. And then we're going to be passing in our data. And we also need our to-do IDs again to be converted into integers. So I'm just going to copy and paste that here, because that's something we've already done before. And so now when we're doing our where clause, or our where yeah, where clause, we want to make sure that it fits both conditionals. And only if it matches both conditionals or both conditionals are true, then we will do that update. So in order to do an and, we would have an and then you have basically an array, an array of things to check for. So in here, we'll have two objects. So we'll do an array, or an object, and then an object. And then in this first object, we'll have to make sure that the ID is inside of our new IDs array. So we can check for that using the same in that we used before. New IDs, comma, and then outside of this object, in the next one, we'll want to make sure that it's also is completed is set to false. So comma, and then I think that should be good. We gotta add a comma here, and if I hit save, it'll add commas for me, prettier. So we can save that. And then, oh, actually, no, I need to do set the data. We need to reset this is completed to be true. So down here, we can do data colon is completed set to true. And then comma, and hopefully that will work. So save that. And let's try it out in our playground. So let's go ahead and reset the browser again, or oh, okay, I guess I don't have to reset it, it was already off. We'll go into our playground and we'll set up our reset mutation. So mutation and reset to-dos, and we're going to be doing to-do IDs again. And so we need again our array of to-do IDs that we're going to be updating. So we've got ID 2, 4, and 5. Let's add one more. I thought I had. I don't know. Okay, so we got those to-dos. So now let's set these three, so 4, 5, and 6 to true. So 4, 5, 6, and then here, and we're doing a count, right? So count, let's hit the go, and it will say 3. So now if we go and we check, these 3 should be true, and here they are. So the last thing I wanted to talk about in this video was updateMany with doing something like reordering where you need multiple conditionals. And so this may be, I used kind of a poor solution. I'm not really that happy with it. And there's several different options. I think what I would like to do, maybe later on in the series, is use raw database access to do just like a custom SQL query. That's definitely an option. You can read about that here. And what I ended up doing was essentially just looping through. I just did a loop, and then I did a bunch of single updates. And then I returned a count object that returns the same count regardless of whether there's an error or not. So it's a really bad solution. But I talked around with some people and basically just optimize it as it becomes a problem. So the whole point is just to kind of illustrate what you can do and that you're in control. So let's go ahead and set up our updateMany with reordering. So in our schema.graphql, what you want to do is add a mutation for updateMany to-dos. So updateMany to-dos, and then we're going to want, well, in this case, I have it set up as a batch payload as well for account. And we're going to be passing in an array of objects. And so in order to reorder an item, you need to know what the ID is and what the position is. So we're going to have to pass in an object with the ID and the position. So let's go ahead and set that up. So new positions, and then we can do an array of, and I called this order change. And then here we go, and then batch payload. And so now we're going to need an order change object. So let's go ahead and do that. So input, oh, and I used an input also. So input order change, and then new position int, and then to do ID. Both of them are required. And so let's go ahead and now set up our updateMany to-dos resolver. And we're going to need to use an async function for this one. I wanted to do it later, and I think I will cover it more in depth later. So we'll just go ahead and bear with it for now. So async function updateMany to-dos, and we're going to do parent args context info, and then inside of this function, we need to basically run a for loop, and then we're going to run the update in the loop. And we're going to do one iteration for each object passed into the args.new positions, the length of that array. So let's go do that. And now inside this individual update that we're going to set up, we're checking for the to-do ID passed in with that specific object, and then we're passing in the new position, and then where the to-do ID matches that object's ID, we set that position to that ID. So we'll go ahead and look at it, and we'll see what it looks like. And so the key difference here, other than all sorts of problems that are with this code here, is that we're using async await, and we're putting this outside of the resolvers, so we'll need to put it in. But just to highlight some of the issues, we're not even using the to-do. This count is just returning the length of the array, which could be the same regardless. So, and there's no transactions for, if there's an error or anything like that. So there's a lot of work we could do, but this is just kind of like a thought experiment. So I don't know, I'm satisfied. I don't want to spend too much time on it. But yeah, so let's go ahead and pull this into this resolvers. So we're not in the query, but in the mutation, we want to pull in this updateMany to-dos. So updateMany to-dos, comma, and then that will pull in it so this becomes a mutation instead of just like some async function. So that's it. Now we can go ahead and try running this in our code. So let's go ahead and save and refresh. So I went ahead and made this query myself, or this mutation myself, off screen because it's a pain in the butt to figure out. So first of all, make sure you have your queries, and you also want to set the order or add the order into one of the resolvers. And so we can see that we got 4 orders that are null. I've already restarted my server. And so now if you head over and create a new mutation, basically just mutation, and then the name of the mutation, updateMany to-dos, and then we have a new positions with an array of objects. So each object is separate with the to-do ID and then the new position. So I've got, that's basically it. And then you return the count as one of the resolvers that you're returning, or subfields. And so then if we hit play, hopefully it will work. And so this doesn't actually prove that it worked. So let's go ahead and test or look at the to-dos again and hit go. And now we can see that our order has been updated. And then obviously in the front end, you would have to sort by order or whatever. And so that's basically updating with multiple conditions. And I think honestly, raw SQL might be a better option for that, or just restructuring your code so you don't actually need to do this. So maybe you could sort by priority or something like that. And then that would make this a lot less painful. But anyway, that's it for this video.
Thank you for watching our video. If you found it helpful, please click on the second link in the description to sign up for our newsletter, where we send our best content to help you improve your skills and stay up to date in the industry. Please subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button below and the bell to be notified when we release new tutorials. That's all for this video, everyone. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.